One of the few things you can rely on in life is that everything has a price. You walk into a store, you pick up an item, you look at the tag, and boom, that's the price. No drama, no mystery, no algorithm silently judging your browsing history. Just a number on a sticker. Simple, right? Well, not anymore. Because now things don't just have a price anymore. They have many prices all at once, all at the same time. And the price that you see, well, that's just the price that the algorithm has decided that you will be willing to pay. In the past decade, and especially in the past few years, something quietly crept into our everyday lives. Something that now decides how much we pay for flights, groceries, hotel rooms, concert tickets, Uber rides, and yes, even the coffee you order on an app. Something that has turned the basic act of buying things into a psychological chess match. Welcome to the world of dynamic pricing, where the price you see is not the price I see, and the price you see now is definitely not the price you'll see in 5 minutes. Welcome to Rebel Economics. Today we're diving into the bizarre, infuriating, and honestly fascinating economics behind dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing is simple in theory. Prices change based on real-time supply, demand, and consumer behavior. But in practice, it's a whole different beast. Airlines were the first big players to have prices fluctuate based on various factors, independent of what the real price was initially calculated to be. Back in the 1980s, they realized they could squeeze more money out of passengers by constantly adjusting ticket prices. If demand went up, prices went up. If a flight was half empty, prices dropped. Because for the airline, it was still more profitable to sell a few tickets for cheaper than initially intended than to fly a plane that is half empty. And as the internet evolved and more information was gathered, you could be damn sure that if you searched for the same flight twice, the price magically increased, because the system now knows you definitely want to be taking that flight. The first time you searched for it, maybe you were just perusing, but the second time you searched for a flight of that exact same trajectory on the exact same days, well, clearly you know when and where you're going, and you're sure gonna be willing to pay for it, even if the price now is a little more than what you saw initially. As a matter of fact, the increased price may even signal to you that there is a high demand and you better act fast. But that was just in the 80s. Fast forward to today and dynamic pricing is everywhere. Uber changes prices every minute. Amazon changes millions of prices per day. Ticketmaster adjusts prices when demand spikes. And in some countries, supermarkets even use digital shelf labels that change throughout the day. It's hard enough to keep up with the new prices because of inflation and other external factors. But more and more, you never know what the real price is anymore. And that's not on you. It's just because the idea of a real price is dead. Dynamic pricing is far more interesting than just corporations finding another way to maximize profit. It's a deep study and analysis of human psychology. Companies use behavioral science to figure out exactly how much you're willing to pay. And just like there's no real price anymore, what you're willing to pay is far more flexible than you may think at first. Of course, there are the outside factors impacting what you're willing to pay. An Uber ride on New Year's Eve can cost up to 300% more than regularly. And when it rains, you can be damn sure that the increase in price doesn't just reflect the increase in demand, but more than anything, the increase of what you're willing to pay to get from A to B without getting soaked. But the beautiful part about dynamic pricing, at least when looking at it from the perspective of the corporation, is that they don't even have to wait for the weather to change to impact how much you're willing to pay. They can just use a few psychological tricks so that you'll be happy to spend more money. And at the same time, you might even feel like you got a good deal in the meantime. One of the fundamental techniques used is price anchoring. This is the practice of showing a high price first and then providing a discount. Your brain takes the original price at face value, thereby accepting the value of the product while simultaneously thinking you're getting a great deal. We've all heard about girl math, so if I see some headphones listed for 350 euros and then get a deal to be able to buy them for just 290, well damn, I'd be dumb to let that opportunity pass me by, right? I mean, I'd be saving 60 bucks. Or am I? Maybe the headphones should never have been listed for more than 290 euros. And in reality, there is no deal. I'm not saving money. And just to entirely discredit girl math, I'm definitely not making money. Apart from that, there is the fake creation of urgency via notifications. I'm sure we've all seen them, especially when booking things like flights or concert tickets. Messages like, only 2 seats left at this price. Are there really only 2 seats left? Who knows? But your anxiety says yes. And you definitely don't want to be the sucker that ends up paying more. So your brain is way happier to pull the trigger on the purchase, and in fact will even convince you that it was a good and financially prudent decision. The same is true for price spikes, like in our earlier example of the airplane tickets. Logically, you'd think a price increase would make people less likely to buy, but the opposite is actually true. A higher price indicates scarcity, and you've already seen how quickly the price can change. So you definitely don't want to be the idiot who passes on the offer again just to be paying even more later. And once again, dynamic pricing wins. And then there's one more crucial factor. One that's way more difficult to be aware of than the others. Our cynical mind could question the promotion price or the scarcity that is advertised. But at least if you and your friend look for the first time for the exact same flight at the exact same time, well, you'd see the same price, right? Well, that is no longer necessarily the case, because the pricing algorithms now also take into account your location, device, browsing history. So if you are looking at the flight from your 7-year-old Android phone while your friend is checking the flight from the newest iPhone, well, chances are your friend might see a higher price than you. Or, for example, if your friend looked for 5-star hotels in the area while you looked for cheap deals, this might also affect the price of the flight. Because what each person is willing to spend on it is hugely different. And dynamic pricing targets exactly that. That is also the point why dynamic pricing seems so unfair. Because it uses price discrimination, meaning they are charging each person the maximum they're willing to pay. Companies realize something really important. It's better to sell 100 items at 100 different prices than 100 items at one price. And with the internet, companies are able to collect more and more data about us, learning more about our behavior and psychology as individuals. And most importantly, our behavior and psychology as consumers. With the vast data set that they have managed to accumulate and the immense algorithms that are specialized in finding out exactly what someone is willing to pay based on their browsing history, purchase history, location, device, and other data points, they can make pretty accurate predictions on the maximum price to show you. People in wealthier neighborhoods will be shown higher prices. Same as people who use an iPhone instead of an Android. If you're looking at prices late at night, well, they're going to go up because late night shoppers often are willing to pay more. And ironically, even your loyalty will be used against you. Returning customers sometimes get worse prices because the system knows you'll buy it anyways. From the side of the consumer, it is clear that dynamic pricing does not work in our favor. And in addition to that, it feels incredibly unfair and manipulative. The Euroconsumers Advocacy Group has repeatedly called for the ban of dynamic pricing in certain sectors, and has called for clear regulations on its rules, such as not being allowed to change the price once a purchase process has begun, and needing to display on websites when dynamic pricing is being used. The lack of transparency, ability to exploit and discriminate, as well as the market distortion, meaning that prices rise without adding any actual value to the product, are all major points that are being criticized. And that criticism has come with some success in different parts of the world. In November 2025, the first algorithmic pricing disclosure law has gone into effect in New York, requiring businesses to inform consumers when prices are algorithmically adjusted. A similar rule was established by the UK as part of the Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Act. Other US states have also banned surge pricing during emergencies, and the EU is still investigating it under the Digital Fairness Act. But one thing is clear: dynamic pricing is here to stay. Legislative measures are all focused on the rules of dynamic pricing. None of them talk about outright banning it. The perspective of consumers, I'd say, is pretty clear. So let's see what companies have to say about this. They would argue that dynamic pricing matches supply and demand, which is an age-old way to price things, and has happened far before coining the term dynamic pricing. Apart from that, they say that it's simply an efficient mechanism to not just boost the profit margin, but to increase sales. A McKinsey study found that price optimization increases operating profits by 20 to 40%. A Booking.com case study showed that dynamic pricing algorithms helped hotels increase occupancy by 26%. But more than just that, dynamic pricing helps with inventory optimization. Items that will expire soon or are overstocked can be sold for cheaper, thereby reducing food waste for supermarkets and grocery chains, for example. This may actually be one of the few examples I have found where dynamic pricing can actually be considered something positive. From the perspective of companies, dynamic pricing has also become an important tool to stay ahead of their competition. And no one does that better than Amazon. It analyzes prices of competitors in real time, the purchase histories of over 300 million customers, its stock in warehouses around the world, as well as seasonal trends and festive periods, all at the same time. And the result? Amazon changes prices every 10 minutes, allowing it to remain competitive and increase margins by 25 to 30% compared to traditional retailers. And while dynamic pricing, all on its own, is bad enough, we can be sure that it will only get more complex as AI enters into the mix. Imagine you get news of a sick relative. The doctors explain some of it on the phone, but you only understand half of it. So the moment that you hang up, you turn to your trusted AI and ask for the details to get an explanation of the many medical words that the doctor threw at you. While you're at it, you also look up the hospital where your relative is at and ask the AI if your loved one is well taken care of there. Now imagine if the pricing algorithm of the airline knows all of this. What is the maximum price you're willing to pay now? A flight that might cost $200 normally could now be priced at $300, $500, $1,000. You are desperate, and the AI can use that against you and make you pay dearly just so you can see your loved one once more. Example. And AI can do much more, and will do so. AI will be able to analyze your facial expression, your typing speed, your emotional state, past purchases, social media activity, just to give a few examples. Knowing all of this, they will also know exactly how much you're willing to pay. If dynamic pricing on its own is already a beast, well, with AI, it will be a behemoth on steroids. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the madness of modern pricing, then please leave a like and subscribe. There are already a bunch of videos on the channel that analyze crazy economics, so check out the next video and stay tuned for more. I'll see you next week here on Rebel Economics.